get the ball rolling, and I'd like to welcome everybody to the latest Ship Management International webinar. We're very, very fortunate today to have the CEOs of 6 of the largest ship management companies here today taking up that. And thank you very much, gentlemen, for giving up your time today to come in and have a conversation with us today. We're going to stick it very much to the hour. And it's really a debate on the whole issue of cooperation and competition within the sector against this backdrop of COVID and associated aspects like that with repatriation, but also with the way that the industry is starting to develop and evolve. We have just short of 400 delegates who are registered to come in today, and they're starting to flood into the room now. And they will also start to push forward some questions as well, which I'll fire back at the panelists. I've also had questions, strangely, emailed to me over the last couple of days as well, so we'll keep that flowing. Just to go through the speakers, just going from left to right, on my screen, Captain Rajesh Unni, CEO of Synergy Marine. Thank you very much for coming along today, sir. Good to see you. Then we have Mark O'Neill, CEO and President of Columbia Ship Management. We have Bjorn Hojgaard, CEO of Anglo-Eastern Univan, and thank you very much, Bjorn. Nice to see you. Ian Beveridge, CEO of British Ship Management. Hello, sir. Nice to see you too. And then we have Graham Westgarth, CEO of V.Group, and Olav Nortun, CEO of Thome in Singapore. So, gentlemen, welcome to our debate this morning. Looking at this whole issue of cooperation and competition, I do it against this sort of backdrop of the image that shipping and ship management has. You know, we've had this dilemma over the last month or so, where we've had a perceived lack of lobbying within the industry with national governments as far as the repatriation of seafarers are concerned and how they should be treated as key workers. But then on the back of incidents like the Wakashia, and also we had another incident with a livestock carrier recently, where a casualty like that has encouraged commentary from entities such as the Pope and also Richard Branson, and also even poorly informed social media posts about shipping's sort of dirty image. And you've got this sort of dichotomy here. And I just really wanted to say, you know, why aren't we getting it right? And I think when you've got a situation like the Pope coming in, who is the entity or the body responsible for responding to that type of criticism? So let me bring in Mark first on here. Mark, what are your views on this? If you could just give us a little bit of a flavour also about your overarching sort of views on cooperation or competition within the sector.
Yeah, thanks, Sean, and thanks to SMI for organising this talk, which I think is very important. I'm going to start off by perhaps saying something that is not expected, insofar as we shouldn't underestimate the importance of competition, and I mean healthy, moral, transparent competition as an antidote or antithesis for a monopoly cartel situation, which wouldn't be in our clients or in the market's best interest. So I think good, healthy, moral, transparent competition is exactly right. Now, against that backdrop, I think there must be occasions, and we're in the middle of one now, where collaboration, cooperation, and working together makes sense in certain sectors, and on the humanitarian side, on the safety side, and on the efficiency side. Certainly, when COVID first hit us back in January, February of this year, although it seems a lot longer, doesn't it? We got together with a number of the individuals on this panel, and you know, I was stunned really how quickly, probably 20 minutes, no more, of phone calling around to put together a body, we called it Solidarity Amongst Ship Managers, which hasn't achieved perhaps as much as we hoped for, but certainly achieved a lot more than was previously the case. And there's been some really useful collaboration, and we've certainly kept the propellers turning throughout this COVID period. And I think there has been a lot of useful collaboration within the ship management community. When you look at some of the biggest clients who use the majority of the ship managers on this panel, those clients are also driving that collaboration because they want to see the ship managers come up with a uniform solution to some of the problems that we're facing. So I think there's been a lot of collaboration, of course, with a weathered eye on the future and future healthy, moral, transparent competition as well. And we shouldn't forget, Sean, too, that a lot of the managers on this panel have different issues. If you are a manager with a primarily Chinese crew, or a primarily Indian crew, or a primarily Filipino crew, you're going to have very different issues, and it's not always possible to collaborate. So I think to the extent that it's been possible, there has been a good deal of collaboration. But we also have to remember our task here is to serve, and we provide a service to our clients, and not all of our clients want us to collaborate. They want to gain commercial advantage. So we shouldn't get ahead of ourselves and put ourselves in the driving seat. We provide a service to our clients, and if our clients want us to collaborate with other ship managers, then of course we do. But sometimes they don't, and they want to get commercial advantage. But to your start point, which is this image of shipping, and perhaps shipping hasn't painted itself in the best picture over the last few months. I don't think we should be beating ourselves up at all. I think what we've managed to achieve as an industry, and I don't mean just the ship managers, but as an industry over the last 6, 7, 8 months, has been truly outstanding. When you look at what all of our crewing departments have had to do, the chess game they've had to play in rotating crews in situations which change not just by the day or by the hour, but by the minute, I think it's truly astounding that shipping has been relatively unaffected throughout this, and that crews have been managed to be rotated at all, and we haven't had the world come to a complete trade standstill. So, far be it from me to criticize the likes of Richard Branson, but I think what shipping has achieved over the last few months, there are very few other industries that would be capable of doing that.
So I'm going to go around all the panelists just to answer this first question, and then it's going to be open to everybody to butt in. But Bjorn, let me bring you in now. I mean, shipping unaffected, as Mark said, but you've got seafarers who are on board ship for 15 to 16 months, and it's a safe environment for them. They can't get out of airports. There's a lot of reasons why they can't come on board ship. But I mean, going back to that original question, is shipping getting it right when we have situations like this?
Thanks, Sean, and thanks for inviting me to join this panel. Well, I think shipping is getting it too right. I mean, we say shipping moves 90% of everything, and shipping has continued to do so despite COVID-19, despite the lockdowns all over the world. And that's at the core of the problem here. Nobody is affected, not the receivers of this tremendous service, only the seafarers, the owners, and the ship managers. So we're the ones struggling with it, but the world still gets its energy, still gets its food, its clothing, and its medical supplies. And exactly for that reason, does nobody care? It's because we get it too right. Had the global supply chain that is shipping, had it come to a complete stop just for a couple of weeks, I can tell you that governments all over the world would be scrambling to make sure that ports are open, that airports are open, and that flights are resuming to move these 1.5 million people to and from ship when required. So in a way, we got it too right. Now, the world needs shipping, and unfortunately, it has very little appreciation for what shipping does for it. The criticism you hear, I think has some merit. I think we can do better, but at the same time, it's easy to sit in an air-conditioned office in the United States, sipping your coffee harvested in South America, and writing on a computer made in China before you take your Japanese car back from work, not appreciating where all that comes from, and say, well, shipping is a polluter and is not, not living up to the standards. So I think the first thing we have to do is to tell the story of why shipping is so important to all of us. And unfortunately, what I've seen in the last 6-7 months now is that, there is this beggar thy neighbor policy with regulators all over the world. Everyone appreciates what shipping gives them, at least when you speak to them, but nobody wants to be part of the solution. It's always somebody else has to do that. And that's really a problem. I think, you see the Maersk Etienne with the refugees in the Met, and nobody wants to take these people as well. And it's despicable. It really is. I mean, in many ways, we're being blamed for all these malaises, but really, what I would like to ask for is for a little bit of attention from regulators. And I think when it comes to cooperation, I think there's nothing more we can cooperate more about as ship managers than bringing our voice to bear towards this issue.
Olav, let me bring you in on this, and it's if ever there's an opportunity for the industry to cooperate on it, is getting this message out. I think as Bjorn was saying, but it's a drum that has been repeatedly beaten over the last sort of decade and more about shipping is invisible, to the man in the street, let alone to other industries. Can managers do more? Can the industry do more? And can owners? I'm going to bring Ian in a second as well, from an owning company as well as a ship management company. But Olav, what are your thoughts?
Can we do more? I think, yes, of course we can do more. Are we succeeding to a certain level? We are. I think I will echo what Bjorn is saying, kind of on the level we have been too successful in kind of making sure the vessels are running. When it kind of backing to what you started out with, to the competition or cooperation per se, certainly there need to be a healthy competition of whatever business you are in, and we all strive to find that niche, our own place, in that whole chain. But there's also a great space for cooperation, and the pandemic brought that out. The question is, are we effective enough of following up? We drummed together initially, came together and kind of tackled the situation, but so what's next? We still have the challenge with the crew changes, and that challenge is going to be here for a while. The pandemic is not over. When you're going to look around you, it seems to kind of keep on rolling, and I think we should brace ourselves for a long haul. But are we effective in driving the right messages? I'm not so sure. And I ask myself, where is the industry body? Where is the part of the industry that should do that? And is it to us as a service industry, the ship manager, to do it? What about the others? What's the rest of the industry, the rest of the supply chain, the cargo owners? Where are they on this? Where is the insurance company? The cargo owner could play a different game if they wanted to. I don't see them. What I'm hearing is that they say, we don't want any crew changes on the vessel which carries my cargo. Okay, that's a hurdle we need to tackle. It's another one. Is that a cooperating on the issue? Yes, if you kind of want to avoid a stop, or you want to avoid to make absolutely sure that you don't not get anyone on board with the virus, with the infection on board. And of course, I think that's what all of us is driving at, is to making absolutely sure that you have nobody on board with the virus, because that keeps things running. But we haven't been successful in engaging the wider industry, and particularly on the cargo side, but also on the insurance. Where are they? Are they fumbling their way through this method, how to deal with it, with the challenge that arises from having a crew with a failed crew change, or with a vessel with a COVID on board, how it's treated, how it's managed, how it's received. I think we as an industry need to stretch ourselves a little bit further than we've done it today, when we look at us as a ship manager. But astonishing, I think, and the more I think about it, Bjorn, I say, we have been too successful. Maybe that's our curse this time. And the other part, we need to bring in other parties, because cooperation need to be there. It need to be cooperation. We are running into maybe one of the biggest challenges for shipping is decarbonization coming up. That will require significant cooperation. On improved safety standard, we need a better cooperation than we have, or different cooperation than we have today. And the challenges we have today on the crew need to continue. We need to continue tackling and communicating around it. And so,
Okay.
so I don't think it is I think there isn't topic that we shall and will cooperate on at the same time as we are competitors. That's the nature of the business.
Well, I think that sort of brings in that element as to, who will be doing this lobbying, who we're talking about bringing in the other parties and what industry bodies should be doing this work. I mean, that's a very, very pertinent question. Ian, what are your views on this, Ian? Give me your thoughts. And certainly with Schulte being an owning entity as well as running a management business, give me your views from your perspective.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. Well, I mean, firstly, ship owners are traditionally rather low profile, at least most of them. Maybe historical reasons, maybe due to the type of work, international trading, flags of convenience topics, tax topics. So I think a lot of ship owners prefer to keep a lower profile.
Hello, Ian. I think
things you've been mentioning.
Keep going. Yep. You froze a little bit.
Is that okay?
Keep going. Yeah, you're fine.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I think to get ship owners together to really make a concerted media campaign is difficult. I think that has to go more via industry organizations or industry collaboration. So I think it's difficult for individual ship owners, even ship managers, to really move anything. But if we collaborate, I see there's a lot of potential, and I think Intermanager has already started some initiative more related to COVID. But in terms of the industry perception of shipping, obviously there's a huge amount that has to be done, and maybe one has to spend some money to do it. But in the end, we have to try and change the perceptions. So I think that's also very important for attracting people into our business in future, trying to get the best talent both on the ships and into the offices.
Okay, thank you very much, Ian. And I'm going to bring in Graham then Rajesh on this. I mean, Graham, I mean, we're starting to get questions coming in from the audience, and there's one that's come in saying that the industry has no idea what to do. This is very interesting here. Graham, what are your views? I mean, we do have things like the round table of ship owners, and certainly that was something that the managers through Intermanager, for instance, was never allowed onto. But I mean, is it going to be down to the big managers to do something about this whole system of needing to cooperate, or can you be turning to big associations to help you? What are your views? You're still on mute.
Yeah, sorry. If I look at this through a different lens, maybe starting to talk a little bit about COVID. I think a wise man once said to me that it's not all black and white. Actually everything's grey. And when we think about cooperation and competition, I think that it's particularly relevant as we think our way through this. But there's no doubt that we have a moral obligation to our seafarers and the people who are working tirelessly, I think, to bring them on and off ships. And and we need to. There's no doubt in my mind also that we need to cooperate to find ways of overcoming the obstacles that stand in the way of us being more effective. And I think there are a lot of initiatives that are being carried out to try and do that. And that's that's very much dealing with the logistics part of it. But we also, I think, collectively and individually need to pull every other lever that we can. So when I think about the levers, I think that's engagement with the legislators, engagement with the industry associations, engagement with the media and the governmental and local authorities. We need to be aggressive in really pulling all of those levers, and we should do it individually, but we should do it collectively as well, because the more noise we can make around this particular area and the importance of seafarers, as a number of the panelists have said, then the better. We can't do any damage, really. I think the other thing that's worth flagging is the fact that we do cooperate in a lot of areas. We're all members of Intertanko or BIMCO or Intercargo, and all of those organizations have committees that work on the development of best practices. And those best practices are generally around protecting the assets of our customers, but also our seafarers. And again, we have a real debt that we owe our seafarers and also our customers. So we do cooperate. Could we do more? Of course, you can also do more. But if I kind of turn to this larger issue that you're raising, that has been raised, which is the profile of the industry. This is my 49th year in the industry. Well, actually, I'm into my 50th year. I just passed 49. And as long as I can remember, people have been talking about the profile of the industry. Mm. And, in my 5 years as chairman of Intertanko, and then the 5 years, plus the 5 years I had on the executive committee, that's 10 years. How could we positively, what should we be doing to really raise the profile positively in the industry? And the reality is we simply have not been able to do that. And there are a number of reasons, barriers that stand in the way. But I think this COVID situation should force us to take a step back and really engage with the industry associations and push them to actually collaborate collectively and try and create this one voice towards the public. And then we should be prepared through the industry associations to commit some funds to actually basically outlining, as Bjorn talks about, the value that we bring to society and the value of the seafarers that sail on the ships. So I think this is an opportunity for us and I think we have bodies in place that allow us to actually take this situation and potentially create it into a positive. But it requires time and effort and we all play a part in that.
I'm gonna take up a few of these points when we open the debate up to the floor, just after we've heard Rajesh's comments on it, because you made a couple of interesting comments there, Graham. Rajesh, give me your views on this whole issue here. I mean, there's a number of things being raised here about the need for engagement, industry associations, etc., but also the individual companies coming to the fore. What are your thoughts?
Thanks, Sean, for having me. I would like to break this question into first two halves. One, we talk about where is competition versus collaboration, and then how do we get the attention to the right place. So if you look at our industry's reputation for efficiency, or the productivity gains we offer our clients, or whether it's the deployment of technology to power our business, or simply to attract the best personnel, basically these are driven by our desire to be best in class. And ship management's competitiveness is the foundation on which our reputation for putting the customer first is built. So in that sense, competition drives excellence, no doubt, like even Mark said, right? But I think this ghastly pandemic has also made it quite clear that more cooperation is the only way forward. So in that sense, let's see on what are those areas where I really think we can collaborate, for example. So if I have to put the balance between competition versus collaboration, I say, for example, we could compete on cost efficiency and technology, for example, while we together collaborate on things on safety. We can compete to make our ships as efficient as possible, while clearly understanding that we have a larger role to play cooperating to build a more sustainable, decarbonized future. And we may even compete to recruit the best seafarers, for example. But I think we must cooperate so that their collective welfare is always our first concern. So if you look at those three bullet points where I'm saying that we can kind of collaborate, whether it's safety, whether it's about a sustainable, decarbonized future, or mental well-being and seafarers, well-being. So in these areas, I think there are different bodies that are available today. And like everybody said, I think the shipping industry in general got together. We were very early on, we created this alliance, been part of this task force, developing protocols, sending it to the IMO. But how effective has that letter been at the government's hands in those local jurisdictions? So clearly, I think that those are the areas where we need to work on, where we go beyond the port and we have a voice that reaches as a more, at a more granular level, where somebody can act on those voices. Otherwise, we are just hearing our own voices in an echo chamber, I feel. So there are definitely a lot of industry bodies that are there, but at least on these fundamental areas, we need to have one voice, whether it's safety, whether it's creating a sustainable, decarbonized future, or whether it's about seafarers' well-being and mental health. So to answer your question candidly, whether these bodies are enough, I don't know. There's not enough data that I can say that it is enough or not enough. But clearly, one thing is visible, that the voices have not reached the right places. And you can see what's happening at Mars incident recently, or even many of our own cases. Right? We are left to the decision of a very small set of people who don't have the larger picture. So I think we need to revisit the structure that we have today on how this is being communicated and handled. That would be my take. Okay,
thank you very much, Rajesh. And looking at now, opening it up to the floor, really, just please everybody just butt in and give me your comments. I mean, this whole issue about the need for cooperation there, but what industry body can ship management rely on? Because there was about 5 or 6 years ago, I think at CMA, they talked about having one association for shipping that would then go to governments and say the shipping industry wants this, or the shipping industry is going to do that. And then you had some of the associations in favor of it, some of them not, and I think generally driven by the secretariats not wanting to lose their jobs within those associations. But how can that effectively be done? Is there one association? You have intermanager within your sector, but what we're seeing here is maybe the sort of a sort of Ajax of ship management companies here who are investing, trading, putting their seafarers, at the top of their list of priorities. Are you going to be relying on one association, do you think, or is it going to be very much down to individuals? Who wants to open up the comment on that?
Sean Graham here. I mean, one point to raise is that there is the round table, which is meant to actually, which consists of the head of some of the major industry bodies. And there's in my view, there's no reason why intermanager should not be part of that. And the round table, I think has the potential to coordinate the positions of the various industry bodies. But the question is it really using that potential? And my view is that somehow we need to, because I think you're also right about the secretariats potentially not being inclined to really push, if you like, some form of consolidated position, because of the safeguarding their own well-being in a way. Even though I believe that they're all well-meaning and well-intentioned and do a good job. But I think the round table and which is basically the chairman of the various industry bodies,
has the ability to actually do more, and we should really be pushing on that. And we have a
John,
voice. We have a voice.
Can I just add, you know, it is shipping as an industry, as a sector, is made up of a number of component parts, isn't it? As we all know, we have the owners, we have the charters, we have the commodity traders, we have the managers, etc., and many other parts that I haven't mentioned. It's no different from the aircraft industry or the haulage industry or the freight forwarding industry. You don't in those industries have single bodies representing the collective whole, and shipping is no different. I mean, I think we have to be careful what we wish for, and you know, the beauty of shipping is its competition and collaboration when required, but it is its competition because no innovation has ever come as quickly as when there is competition involved. When there's competition and players feel they can secure a market advantage, innovation for good comes much more quickly than collaboration of a few sleepy old folks sitting around the table protecting their self-interest. I'm saying the radical here, but you know, we shouldn't be too keen to put down competition and err on the side of collaboration. I think what is clear is that there is not a voice, a single voice addressing the collective view to governments, and I don't think it necessarily needs to be a body, but it has to be a collective voice, and that's clear. And we talked before, I think, about the role of the IMO. Is the role of the IMO that collective voice? No, it's not. The IMO is not a lobbyist. The IMO is a regulator and a legislative for the shipping industry. It's not a lobbyist. We could, as an industry, and managers would be part of that, engage a lobbyist. You joked about the Pope being against us. Maybe we want him on our side, and maybe he's the most effective lobbyist. You know, but we do need a lobbyist, and that goes as an industry as a whole, with legislative in various important nation states, for sure. But I would caution against this anti-competition, because competition is the best driver of innovation, which is, and it's through innovation that we will sort out a lot of these problems. I can tell you now, and we learn, don't we, from these experiences, the next wave of COVID or the next pandemic that hits us, we will be much better prepared to ensure that crew are more effectively rotated, etc., than we're on this one. You know, let's not judge ourselves on whether the shipping industry has effectively managed the crew rotation problem, because I can tell you now, most of the managers on this panel have got excellent crew rotation records, and they take it absolutely seriously, and they put all resources into this, all resources at their disposal to ensure that their crew are rotated. If we look at our own numbers of crew who have gone over the 12 months, it is extremely low. Because like all of the other managers here, we are devoting every waking hour and every sleeping hour to achieving that purpose. Why? Because of competition and people. You know, we're focusing on people in all of this, in this pandemic, which is so important. So I don't think we should overplay it too much.
I mean, I want to bring some of the others in on this. I mean, one question that we've had coming through, which is exactly what Mark's touching on there. You know, what is the current situation regarding seafarers stranded on board ship? You know, is it still 300,000? Is that still the case? They give the statistics that 1 in 3 crew changes still can't go ahead. I mean, is the situation improving? Bjorn, what are your thoughts on this? Talk to me about, give me your views.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. So I don't know what the situation is in the industry. I can tell you what it is for us. So a week ago, 1st of September, we had since 1st of April done crew changes on more than 1,000 ships. So that's more than one round per each ship in the fleet, involving 18,708 crew movements. 9,400 joiners and 9,400 off-signers. We still, as Mark said, we have a few. We have 12 ships out of 650, where there are still people who have been on board for more than 12 months. So I think that, you know, the picture is that by and large, despite the difficulties, we have been able to do most of the crew changes at great cost. I might add, and I think also, you know, logistically, crew change was always difficult. You have to get the right person to the right ship at the right time. Now that's been a little bit thrown out the window. Right now, it's just to get a warm body on board a ship to relieve you know, another crew, and that brings with it some risks in terms of composition of crew, performance, etc., etc. You know, I think by and large we are managing as an industry in a very difficult time, but I also think that it's unappreciated that as this goes on, it's going to increase the risk of major casualties. Now, I don't know about, you know, some of the recent ones, whether they have a root in fatigue or disillusionment around not knowing when I get off, etc. But I wouldn't be surprised. I think it's unsustainable, and I think we need to find a voice. I agree with Mark in you know, saying that, you know, necessity is the mother of invention, right? And if as we compete, and through competition we innovate, we get better. I think where we perhaps fail is that we speak too much in our own bubbles, right? I mean, this is an industry forum attended by industry players, and we speak to each other about the same problem. But we really need to get beyond that and into discussions with policy makers that isn't just the transport, the Secretary of Transport or the transport media, but into the public domain, so that it becomes, you know, a known issue, not just for shipping people, but for people enjoying the fruits of shipping.
But who's going to take up that mantle, though? Because that's the big issue here. There's a lot of areas here that not only ship management, but shipping in general, you know, is failing to get its message out into the market, whether that's general public, whether that's to the regulators, whether that's to other sectors that it's working with. Who is going to be able to do that? And who?
Well, I think we all have. We all have a responsibility to do that, right? I mean, I mean, this year I'm the chairman of Hong Kong Shipowners Association. I've been writing numerous letters to South China Morning Post to influence public sentiments about crew change in Hong Kong. I've been having you know, meetings not just with the Minister of Transport, but with the Chief Executive here to try and influence policy for crew change in my backyard. I mean, we've been engaging with The Economist, who is a global newspaper, and gotten the message out there. I know Rajesh Unni has done the same with the BBC. I think we all have a responsibility to try and get beyond the trade bubble and into the bigger picture.
What's interesting, just picking up on that point, is there's a body in the UK which represents the food industry. So we reached out to that recently, and obviously it has the president or the managing director or general secretary. I'm not sure what his title is, but basically it explained the situation to him and the consequences of, you know, that if seafarers kind of laid down their tools, that pretty soon then these supermarket shelves would be empty. And he was totally unaware of it. And, you know, and so shame on us for not kind of reaching out. And then, so I think there is an opportunity to go out and interact with these various, basically the people that we're supplying with whatever resource they need to you know, to keep the wheels of industry turning. So I do think that we, you know, to your point, Bjorn, we live in the bubble, we talk to each other, and we're not very effective at actually engaging with industries outside of our sphere. Just going to come back a little bit on some of the comments that are being made about competition, all of which I agree with. Competition does actually drive innovation, and it's something that we should guard and promote. But I think my own view about competition is that it's very much about what differentiates companies is the relevance of the product, of their strategy to the product or resources that they have, and how effectively they execute it. Execution is actually what differentiates companies. So I think back to one of the original questions, cooperating on best practices, safeguarding our seafarers, looking after people, I think that makes perfect sense. The execution of our strategy is I think is where that's what drives innovation and differentiation, and for sure we should promote that.
Well, I want to bring Olav and Ian and Rajesh in some join the debate here, gentlemen. I mean,
so for me, thanks, Sean. For me, I think I kind of agree with a lot of things, but if we need to really get people's attention, then we must be focused on 2 or 3 things that we think we have to drive this home, come what way. And that focus will help us get there. Otherwise, it will be, sometimes I feel, topics that are flavor of the month types. We will, like somebody wrote on the questions, we will in 5 years be sitting and talking again about how our voice is not reaching where we want it to be. So I think if we can clearly come out with, there are some low-hanging fruits on where we can collaborate, and it's important, safety, or what are the stuff that we talked about, decarbonization or mental well-being. So these are areas where we definitely need to collaborate and quickly create a singular voice so that we are focused on our expectations, because I agree with Graham completely. Execution is the key. So we can have any strategy. It's, like Tyson says, it's you will forget all that when the first punch lands on your face, right? So it's about executing after that. So for us, I think it's about finding those 3 or 4 or 5 things that we really want to go after and say, okay, let's get attention and the voices heard on these things, and hopefully create a better world in a decade from here. That would be my suggestion.
Olav, have you got any comments on this? This is some interesting threads here.
Yeah, I've been quiet for a while, and thinking through the topic. Okay, on decarbonization, there is a drive in the industry. I think what the pandemic's brought forward, and it's not going to go away, is the issue regarding the seafarers. I think we can all pat us on the shoulders. I don't have anybody more than 11 months on board. I'm not proud of that. I want them to be home, and when the turn of the contract is done. We are not there yet. We still have a way to go before we're back on that one. And that whole part of how we actually, whether it's I think Capt. Unni says, it's about the mental wellness. It's about how is this whole seafarer issue going to be moving forward now in this pandemic, because pandemic is not going away. And what comes afterwards? Are we going to have a different way of looking at it? Are we going to put this together in a different way? Are we going to are the contractual part going to be changed? How are we going to do this? Are we happy with having them on board for 11, 12 months? I'm not.
So will the change come though, Olav? How will?
Yeah, no, I don't have the change. No, I think that's what the other part of it. I don't have a solution, but this is the one. This is one of the topics that need to be debated and discussed. Because, and I don't think it's helped to blow it up in the bigger in the media, kind of getting the general media. We as an industry need to sort some of these issues out. And I think that's the pandemic, and for a better word, is pushing into to make changes and drive this differently. As Bjorn says, managing the crew change has always been a challenge. It's just been 10 times more difficult than it used to be.
Don't you think though, guys, that we are in danger of knee-jerk reactions in the context of the pandemic? We can't judge ourselves by what we do or haven't done in the context of this pandemic, because all of us have bent over backwards to do whatever we possibly can for crew and for our clients. What we need to focus on, as you're saying there, Olav, is the crew and better identification with what crew crew members go through on a day-by-day basis, whether it's their training, whether it's their mental well-being, whether it's their catering, whether whatever other issues exist, and communication. Because I can tell you now, since we have invested a huge amount of time in communication, identification with our crew, the morale on board our vessels has probably never been higher, despite the fact that some of these people have sadly been on board for extended periods of time, because they're being communicated with for the first time over a long period, probably in their entire careers. And, you know, in any emergency, such as the pandemic or a war or whatever, there will be inconsistencies. They won't be rotated on a 3-month or a 6-month or a 9-month basis. I'm sorry, guys, that's the reality of the situation we find. But tell them exactly, keep them updated, keep them informed, give them Wi-Fi, give them mental well-being support, etc., etc. And then you will have understanding, and the issue will become a non-issue for the majority, because we have to deal with what we face now. It's thankfully, it's not going to be here forever. It's not going to be recurring on a regular basis, one would hope. We have to deal with this emergency. And the focus, I think, should be more on communication, identification with the crew, and the surrounds than what we're doing wrong and what we're doing right. Because fundamentally, I think we're all trying our hardest with the means available to us to do the right thing.
Ian, thank you, Mark. Let me bring you in, Ian, on this. We haven't heard from you on this debate. And actually, with the questions are flying in, the panelists can't see this. I see it on my screen. So in about 5 minutes, we'll have 10 minutes of the Q&A from the audience here. But Ian, just...
Yeah, I would like to say that we are very keen to collaborate with both our ship management competitors and also other ship owners, not necessarily our customers. We think the COVID is enormously expensive. We have to see how we can work together to reduce these costs. And it's also an enormous burden on our seafarers. So by working together, we can maybe try and smooth out some of the challenges for the seafarer, the quarantine, the testing, the transportation, try and make things less complicated for them, also for the agents. If we can agree on some common procedures, I think it will make life easier for everybody. So we are very keen to collaborate with, well, firstly, those on the call here today and others as well. So that's one area of collaboration that we're very keen on. The other ones were also mentioned by some of my colleagues on the decarbonization. I think the costs are far too high for each of us to try and do it ourselves. I think by collaborating, we can be much more effective and deliver something as an industry. And the third area is, I think we can collaborate on developing future crew sources, because well, the dynamics, the demographics are changing. We have to think about where our crews will come in 10 years' time. Things like the COVID do not make seafaring any more attractive to the traditional seafarers, or some countries where we used to obtain a lot of seafarers, and that's already becoming less. So, you know, if we can share resources for training, for recruiting, for developing new sources in a very controlled and measured way, we are very keen on that. So we are very open to collaboration, while we don't mind the competition part as well.
That sounds like an invitation, Ian. I mean, is that an invitation that you're all keen to take up? I mean, looking at further cooperation, I know you've been doing it already. Is this something that could materialize? But you'd have to, and how would you do it?
I think we actually, I'd be surprised, we are, a number of us in this call are already involved in a number of cooperations. So I think it's actually happening, depending upon the circumstances. And I think, and I think Mark mentioned it earlier, it's also about our customers. Our customers are actually, they're having to pay enormous sums of money to actually facilitate the exchanges at this point in time, and credit needs to go to them as well. So I think we shouldn't forget that.
Rajesh, have you got any? Are you in favour of cooperating more and doing something on a formal basis?
Absolutely. Like I said, the few 2 or 3 things that I talked about where we can definitely find room to collaborate. Absolutely. And we're already doing on many of these fronts, actually. And there will be on R&D, for example, on decarbonization and sustainability, there's a huge amount of capital and resource requirements, in terms of talent as well. So these are areas where I think we can and we should, because then we will be able to drive a framework that is achievable, because end of the day, we're also responsible for operations. And in terms of competition, to be honest, I'm really not worried, because competition is a good thing, and competition is a different way to look at it. I think if you create value for your customers, then there is always, you'll be on the winning side. So it's about what value can you create for them. And if you constantly create that, I think, competition is irrelevant in my opinion.
But you certainly see cooperation as being through individual efforts rather than through something like an intermanager. Because if I look at the 6 of you here, 3 of you are members of intermanager, 3 of you aren't. So,
Sean, Olav, just to comment on this, I'm not just, I'll start slightly differently. We are part of different corporations with different companies for different purpose. Along the topic we discuss here as well. Sometimes driven by our own search for a solution, fixing a problem statement. Some of it is because we have common customers that want us to kind of expect us to drive some of the challenges, some of the issues forward. And I, so whether we need a bigger body, I'm not so sure for some of this issue. Kind of for a lot of what we did, for some of these we're discussing today. Do we wish there was a body? Yeah, but I think we have enough if we kind of want to utilize them rightly and correctly.
Yeah.
But so I'm not so sure, kind of, because you asked this question about a super body or whatever you call it, I don't know.
Super or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we have what we need, and I think we are, as an individual and in smaller groups work. And then if there is something really challenging, of course, then like the decarbonization, I think that is one of where the whole industry will have to pull together. But that is through different bodies, not one body who can do it. I think it's depending on where you sit in that chain and what is your contribution and what is your interest in it. So I'm not so sure there is a need for an overarching body, but I think we do cooperate on a lot of this issue. Just to be kind of to at least that's how I see it, because I know what we are doing with different partners.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so we've got about 7 or 8 minutes left. We've got some questions coming in from people. We got one from Douglas, who asks about what the managers are doing to secure better spaces for young seafarers and berth spaces. I mean, I think this is the key thing, that if ever there's a potential sector that's going to be looking and thinking about whether it should have a career at sea because of what's been happening in COVID-19, it must be the seafarers. But what are the managers, what can you do to with regards to berth spaces for seafarers coming into the industry? Who'd like to answer that?
I think we all, Sean, I think we all have vessels on which young seafarers, young cadets can spend time in training. And, I think equally importantly, to encourage people to come to sea is this fostering of an esprit de corps, of a sort of a family culture. And I think all of the companies on this panel have very strong cultures with which the seafarers can identify. I think the biggest test, the biggest result from COVID-19 will be post-COVID-19, when seafarers judge their families, their family companies, on what steps those companies took to look after them and bend over backwards, as I mentioned before, and what steps they're taking going forward. I think that will decide. Maybe it won't be the buck in the pocket that decides on where you make on which company you make your career with. It will be the company that has demonstrated that it has looked after its people the most. And I mean people ashore as well as on board the vessels. And I think that's the best message we can possibly give out now, that from this pandemic, is that people must come first, and that's the people on board and the people ashore. If we do that, then we'll all I think we will get the message out very well, because you have 2 million crew out there who are much more effective in passing the message out than the 6 or 7 of us on this panel, frankly.
I mean, Graham, let me bring you in on this. You know, what lessons the industry has learned from COVID-19, because you know there are things that that we must get right as an industry, but there's also opportunities that have maybe come up as well. I mean, what would you say are the key lessons that have been learned by the ship management sector?
You know, what's interesting, I'm a little bit like Mark. I think at some point we need to step back and think, okay, what actually happened here, and you know, what did we learn, and you know, what do we need to do to be better prepared in the future? And I'm not sure these are lessons, but what I think we did discover was that we're in an industry with people who are remarkably committed and remarkably resilient, and we should actually, you know, we should feel proud to be part of that industry, and you know, personally I feel privileged to actually interact with people who, you know, who despite, you know, being treated in many ways are treated as second-class citizens, you know, continue to actually meet their commitments. And I personally, you know, and I'm sure others on this call, I feel guilty a lot of the time, because I you know, I go to bed thinking about this, I wake up thinking about it, you know, and I think we're all the same, and we're just continually looking for solutions, and being incredibly innovative. But in terms of the longer term, I think, you know, we need to get through this, you know, and then take a step back and rethink, what have we really learned, and how can we just be much better prepared in the future?
And I think really talking to other sectors, and you know, including, you know, the service sectors that you guys work with, you know, that relationship that owners have with managers have with the service providers, the suppliers, etc., has to be robust, and has to be on a cooperative basis moving forward, in order for all elements of the shipping industry to be able to get through this tough period, presumably. And I'm talking about some companies that might find it very, very difficult to survive because of cash flow as much as anything else. I mean, are there any other aspects there through COVID-19 that you know, have been learned, some lessons been learned as far as that's concerned, working closer with service partners or with the owners? Bjorn, do you want to answer that one? Have a thought on that?
No, but when you now give me the stage, what I would like to say here before we end is that I think the biggest danger in all this is that this beggar thy neighbor philosophy spreads. I think it's, you know, shipping is a global industry. It can move all over the world. It's always been a place where we've been looking for a level playing field, no matter where we were, right? And I get worried when I see this, you know, okay, if you have my flag, you can change crew in my port. Or if you do cargo operations here, you can change crew in my port. I think that's a disease. I think it's really, really important to come back to IMO's principle of no more favorable treatment. We have to have a level playing field, and every nation is a beneficiary of shipping, and every nation must reciprocate that beneficial relationship by opening up their ports and their airports and allowing crew change. And well, that's my sort of closing remark here. I'll leave the microphone to somebody else.
Okay. Ian, do you have any last comments to make on that? I mean, that's a very important point that Bjorn has made there.
No, I cannot just want to fully agree with Bjorn. I 100% underline what he says. I mean, I find it amazing that in Australia they want to detain vessels because we cannot relieve the crew. But you know, they can make it very difficult for us to do that. So you know, all countries depend on seaborne trade, and I think they have to do their part to make sure that things are not unnecessarily difficult for the seafarers. So I 100% agree.
Brilliant. Okay, and Gentlemen, thank you very, very much indeed for your time today. We're bang on 12 o'clock here in the UK. I do appreciate giving up an hour of your time today. It's been a very, very good debate and good conversation.